As climate change continues to grow and impact people around the globe, thousands of young people stood up to protest and call for action. Amongst the vast populations of China, however, only one teenager stood up, Wu Hongyi.
出生在桂林，桂林呢是一个山清水秀的城市，我可以就在学习之余，在大自然里面玩耍，这个帮助我和自然建立了一个很深的连结。
This then grew into activism way back in 2017 when O received the pamphlet on veganism and began to pay more attention to the environment around her and the human impact on it as well. In 2018, O learned about National Geographic, which had a special feature on plastic pollution at the time. She decided to share as much about it as she could to others around her in order to try and create an impact and help reduce plastic pollution. In doing so, she began to show her capacity to go against the social constructions found within China. In the country where filial piety is highly valued, O would not only try to make the people around her try to change their ways to a more environmentally friendly one, she also pushed the adults around her to do so as well, getting into many arguments with her parents over this as they weren't supportive of her endeavors. Despite this, O persevered on her activist path.
After hearing about the young activist Greta Thunberg, Wu Hongyi decided to start protesting on the streets of China, creating her first strike in 2019 called Fridays for Future. She planned on protesting every single week to fight for the climate. However, she was arrested only 7 days later, being interrogated for multiple hours. Upon her release, she began taking steps in securing her protection, but would also become frustrated feeling powerless against the suppression of the Chinese government, and her anger was also pushed when she got into arguments with her parents. But she took her frustration and turned it into motivation, leaving her home to continue her protesting. For many months, she would travel the streets of China spreading her message, only stopping and sleeping where she could. Many times, this meant that she would have to sleep on random benches that she would find along the street. She hoped that she could inspire others, and in return she could get food and a place to sleep. But above all, she wanted her message to be heard. She would travel to many different places across China and attend events when she could. And in the meantime, would also start hashtag Plant for Survival. The Chinese government wants full control, but Wu Hongyi was fearless, exposing the government's inactivity when it came to climate change, and pursuing her strike in the face of uncertainty. And over the next year or so, she started to see growing support. She was opening the eyes of thousands across the world with her courage, which included many other young activists.
We may be the last generation to fight together, the last generation to unite. So please, let us treasure our privilege and let it be an opportunity to act. Thank you.
While away from home and living on her own, Howey became disconnected from society and nature. After over a year away from home, she took time to immerse herself once again in the natural world around her. She once said, "The density and noise from urban housing cut me off from nature." Because life in cities is so industrialized and artificial, it has lost its connection to nature. The natural world is something that is used as materials for the progression of humanity. There is no connection between society and nature, which would allow the two to live in harmony together. Because of social reproduction, this way of living has passed through several generations and has become integrated into life within a city. Howey is advocating for a change in how society as a whole views nature so that there are more people that want to preserve the environment. Howey referenced being inspired from a blog by a Chinese author, Hazel Zhang. Recalls particularly that this blog included proverbs and messages from traditional Chinese culture. Back before society had become so urban and profit fixated, China had a more deep connection to the natural world. Natural resources were much more essential to everyday life, so people felt a greater connection to the environment and were more inclined to treat it well. Comments about how this is important and she wants to make people feel that way about the environment again. She hopes that society can learn a lesson from early Chinese civilizations. She encourages people to deepen their connection to nature and to find more ways to appreciate it.
Why am I so enraged about outrages to nature? Because I connect to nature. Nature's pain is my pain. It is engraved in my heart so deeply that I sometimes don't even feel it. In March of 2021, a group of activists working at Le Mormont invited Howey to Switzerland to protest. Their protest was against the expansion of a Lafarge-Holcim chalk mine that would destroy the natural landscape and would release large amounts of carbon dioxide when the minerals were processed into cement. The activists, who had occupied the hill since October of 2020, had gained substantial support in the region. Despite this, Lafarge-Holcim received permission from the Swiss government and ordered the police to evict the protesters and press charges. The Swiss government decided that the value of the land's revenue was greater than the importance of its wildlife and significance to people. Howey was charged with a 1,200 franc fine and a 60-day prison sentence, as were many other protesters. Despite the government's disregard for their outcries, Howey and the others would not ignore nature's suffering. They started a hunger strike in April to continue the protest in a new way. The world in the 21st century is constantly in change. News comes and goes faster than ever, making it hard to keep focus on one issue over time. Likewise, each person cannot always work on a problem forever. Despite this, the environment always needs protection. It encompasses all human life, and it is in danger. In order to protect it, we must all do our part.